This program is not slipping. That's more or less what head coach Shane Beamer said about the South Carolina Gamecocks in his press conference, I believe it was earlier today. And a lot of the outside noise around South Carolina slipping, around them, falling behind the eight ball, whatever you want to put to it, comes from two different trains of thought. The first is who they have hired as their offensive coordinator, Dowell Loggains. Get to more of that in a second. And then the players that have decided they want to go ahead and hit the portal. I want to start there. Marshawn Lloyd and Jaheim Bell have both, I believe, entered the portal at this point in time. Jaheim Bell's already committed to Florida State. Those are two big-time players, two big-time contributors at different points throughout the year for South Carolina. So from the outside looking in, you're saying, you got all this talent that's deciding to leave the program. What's up with that? Let's look at it from the player's perspective. Inconsistency around them, and it sounds like a little bit NIL-fueled. So, okay, if it's NIL-fueled, it is what it is. I don't know that to be the fact. I don't know that's confirmed, but that's sort of the noise that's been simmering. Second piece, inconsistency around you. Your OC decides to go to Nebraska. Okay, I understand that to a degree. But to say that there is a drop-off from Shane Beamer's side of things or from the South Carolina side of things, I think is reaching a little bit. And a lot of that, to me, has to do with personnel. We'll talk more about that in personnel in just a second. But to put it simply, South Carolina is going to be okay without Jaheim Bell, without Marshawn Lloyd. Does that mean that they're happy to lose them? Of course not. It sounds like Shane Beamer had a great conversation with Marshawn Lloyd before he ended up jumping into the portal. It sounds like those are both guys they wanted to keep. But I promise you, that's not going to sink the ship. More on that in just a second. Dowell Loggains. There is a lot of scrutiny around this hire because of the career that Dowell Loggains had in the NFL and maybe some of the success that he lacked in most recent history. But here's the deal. Shane Beamer, during the press conference, had a mic drop moment where essentially he just went after the people that were coming after him and basically said, you don't know what this process is like. You don't have as great a feel on this as you think you do. And proceeded to tell them that, hey, I checked references. That sounds like a little bit of a simplistic thing to do, but when you recruit someone at any other job, that's what you do. Before you hire someone for a new job, you talk to people that either worked for them or they worked for, so their bosses or former employees. And some of those former employees include guys like Alshon Jeffrey, guys like Connor Shaw, both NFL players. Also talked to Bill Parcells, one of the best NFL coaches of all time, talked to other NFL GMs. So to put it simply, the people whose opinions are most informed and really matter and have the most insight as to hiring Dowell Loggains, they all checked off on this. So sometimes we see the product on the field or we see the lack thereof, and we think that tells the whole story. Results are important, but how many of you know the variables around those results arguably give you more context or give you more insight as to the whole story with Dowell Loggains? So Dowell Loggains is a guy who's been around the NFL, who's been around the SEC, who's been around college football, tons of experience. And quite frankly, if you trust Shane Beamer, then you trust this hire. You don't get to say we don't have the guy, you don't get to say we have the right guy at head coach and then criticize all his moves, okay? I wholeheartedly believe if you're a South Carolina fan, you have the exact right guy to lead your program forward in Shane Beamer. So you got to ride with it. Really quickly, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, we'd love to have you at the party. We've had over 1,000 of you join us in the last month and a half from the South Carolina faithful. If you haven't yet joined the party, jump right in. The water is fine. Let's go back to what I was talking about with Marshawn Lloyd and Jaheim Bell. Again, are you happy that they left? Of course not. Two great players, two players that are going to make an impact wherever they end up. Jaheim Bell in Tallahassee, and Marshawn Lloyd at the recording of this video has not committed anywhere. But he's going to be an impact player wherever he ends up. Tons of production from both of them. Here's what I want to make sure I mention in regards to the personnel for South Carolina. When all of this dust settles on the transfer portal, South Carolina will be one of the haves as opposed to one of the have-nots. And if you don't believe me, look at the history. Look at last season as the real sample size for how we want to judge this thing going forward with Shane Beamer and the way he works in the transfer portal. Last year, they got 8 transfers in. One of those being Spencer Rattler, who played big when he needed to at the end of the season, and Juice Wells, another guy who had over 100 yards in 2 of their top 10 wins, in both their top 10 wins, rather. And last year, they got both those guys to Columbia after a 7-win season. So now, fast forward the tape for a year, both those guys have big contributions to your program. And so now you can sell that on the transfer portal recruiting trail and you have proof of concept. If you're a player who's looking to transfer up, like Juice Wells did from JMU, or you're a player who's transferring laterally from a Power 5 program, didn't have the success you wanted to have, like Spencer Rattler, you can say, hey, we have two guys, both from your current situations, came to South Carolina, had really solid seasons, helped themselves a lot in terms of development and the professional level. You want to come be a part of what we're doing here? You want to help yourself? Come to South Carolina. And now it's not so much of a, here's what we're promising. We haven't done it yet, but we think we can do it. It's no, we've done it. We've beaten 2 top 10 teams. We're a ranked team. We've won 8 games. The proof of concept is crucial, which takes a lot of the risk out of it if you're in the transfer portal and you only got 1 year to get what you want to get done. So that's enormous. And I promise you, like I already said, when all this transfer portal dust settles, South Carolina will not be left out in the cold. Are you disappointed you lost 2 great players? For sure. But they're going to reload and they're going to get more talent to Columbia. Also, a big part of that is because the culture is so attractive right now. The culture is on fire in Columbia, South Carolina. Shane Beamer is the one stoking the flame. Here's the deal. Culture does 2 things for you. 1, attracts talent. It says, it's like a big sign that says, if you want to have fun playing football, if you want to win games, come here. Culture attracts talent. You can't always quantify it. You can't always put your finger on it, but you know it when you see it. It's kind of like emotions. That's a bad way to say it, but it's kind of like, being happy. You can't totally quantify it. You can't point it out, but when you see it, you know what it is. Culture, great culture. That's the first thing. The second part, it wins. Culture wins. It doesn't mean you're 100% going to go undefeated because you have it, but I promise you can't go undefeated without it. And right now, South Carolina's culture is continuing to be installed, continuing to be developed, and it's having a really solid upward trajectory. It's continuing to boom. Like I said, 2 top 10 wins against teams that on paper you should lose to. Vegas had them both times as double-digit dogs. South Carolina said, we don't care. We believe in us. We believe in each other. We believe in our system. We believe in our culture. Let's roll. Took care of business against Clemson. Took care of business against South Carolina. Also, they won their close games. That means when you're in the foxhole, when you're down a score, or maybe you're up a score, when it's crunch time, you look to the man next to you, you better have some of that culture that bonds you together. You better have some of that culture that allows you to lock in, focus in, play for the guy next to you, dig deep. Like, that's a lot of what South Carolina has. In 1-score games this year, South Carolina was 2-0. Again, you can't quantify it. I couldn't draw it up for you on a chalkboard, but I promise you, you know it when you see it. 2-0 in close games, mark of a strong culture. So here's the deal. The program, in my opinion, is reaching a point where personnel is becoming secondary. Do not misunderstand me on this. Personnel and talent acquisition will always be king in college football in terms of having a starting point for your program going forward. But having a strong culture and building the program up to the point where that's the top tier. It's the South Carolina logo that you're talking about and not X, Y, and Z player that was there for a year or two in a flash in the pan. That's the direction that South Carolina is heading. Personnel is enormous. They're going to get great personnel. They're going to continue to get great personnel with this staff and with Shane Beamer running the show. But the South Carolina program, I think, is in a really exciting place going forward. Stay locked in. It's a good time to be a Gamecock fan. We appreciate you tuning in. This has been the Hard Count. Nick Brake doing the heavy lifting. Folks, we are live Tuesday, 1 Central, 2 Eastern, same time on Thursday, 1 Central, 2 Eastern. So come on back here. Make sure you're subscribed, got the bell notification. You'll know when we go live. Jump in the live chat. We have a good back and forth, have some interaction. This is a show, yes. This is a channel, yes. What this really is, in my humble opinion, it's a community. For the people, by the people, college football content you know and love every single day. We're going to keep the party rolling, and we will see y'all next time. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.